My name's Richard Buller. I'm 43. In 1987 I was 21, and on September the 30th, 1987, I just arrived late at night in Lhasa, having always dreamed of travelling to Tibet and travelling to Lhasa. I woke up the next morning and went out into the Barkhor, which was the marketplace around, which goes through the centre of the old Lhasa, and was just absolutely enthralled with the sights of spice tables that had come from India, the smells of yak meat and rancid yak butter on butchers' tables, and then just the sound, the life that was there in Lhasa, hearing voices and this Tibetan language, having travelled for so long through China and learnt Chinese. Just I guess conversational Chinese. It was amazing to be in a place where it was Tibetan, different language. Anyway, I was on search for some yogurt, some yak yogurt, and walked around, and as I was walking around the Barkhor, realised there were many, many people, certainly much more than I would have expected for that time of morning. I eventually came to a small square next to the Jokam, which is the holiest site for Tibetan Buddhists, temple in the centre of Lhasa. And I was facing what appeared to be a Tibetan building, but in fact it was a police building, a PSB building, Public Security Bureau building. And there was quite a crowd already, a few hundreds of people standing there protesting, chanting. I got up on a table next to a Tibetan man, and in Chinese was able to understand what was going on. There was a group of monks who'd, with a Tibetan flag, walked around the Barkhor, and they'd been arrested and taken into this police building, and people were angry. They wanted them released. And he explained to me that it was because it was October the 1st, Chinese foundation of the People's Republic of China, and that's why the monks were protesting. But people, they wanted them released. And I guess what I experienced over the next sort of hour and a half was something that certainly changed my life. While I was talking to this man, a Tibetan woman on the pavement next to us, from where we were standing on the table, was breaking up the pavement into smaller rocks and handing them to men around her, and clearly asking them, pushing them, come on, throw a rock. And that's what began to happen. This police building began to take rocks, and then someone else tipped up a police motorbike with a sidecar and opened the petrol tank. And that then flowed down petrol, and the door caught fire. And I saw many things over that, the coming couple of hours. And probably some of the key ones were things like the fire engine coming up the side alley, a rain of rocks coming down and shattering the windscreens, and these firemen looking bewildered in terms of not understanding what was going on, and how angry people, the Tibetans, were at any symbol of Chinese occupation. And then they began to take things out of the police station and looting them. But not looting it and carrying it away. I can remember one man coming out with a ghetto blaster. This is back in 1987, and he just smashed it on the ground, and as he smashed it, the crowd cheered. And then one of the monks who'd been arrested was brought out from the side of the building, which was now seriously on fire. And he was carried high on some people's shoulders, and he raised his arm into the air and shouted, and the crowd responded with incredible reply. And I could see flaps of skin hanging off the side of his arm, where clearly he'd been rescued from a burning room or a burning cell within the police building. I ran out of film and ran back to my hotel, and as I was coming back, I could hear cracks and came back into the front of the square and realised that there were security people now all around the tops of the buildings, and they were firing over the heads of the crowds, all except I could see one looked like an officer. He had a pistol, and he was just picking people out of the crowd and shooting them. And I could see people falling, and it occurred to me that while I was a witness, this wasn't my struggle, and this wasn't the place that I wanted to die. So I ran to the back and took shelter, and in fact I was running into more bullets because they were firing over the crowd that was left at the front of the square, and hid in a room where, in a building site where there were a number of other people hiding, and a young Tibetan boy was urged to take me to safety, which he did do, and I ended up in an apartment right at the back of the square, but well away from the firing, but could still see people walking through the square. And he introduced me to his father, who was quite an old man. In my very broken Chinese, I spoke with the young boy, who was about 8 or 9, and the old man spoke to his son in Tibetan. And he explained that in 1959 he'd taken a gun and gone into the streets of Lhasa and killed Chinese, and for that he'd served many, many years in prison. And when he'd relatively recently been released, he started a family, which is what he always wanted. But now he was too old, and this was a struggle that his son would need to continue. But he had something to ask of me, and he said, look, this is Tibet, this is my country, and I'm a Tibetan, but I cannot leave. But you are a foreigner, a visitor. You've seen many things here today. Please go home and tell your people what the Chinese are doing to us. And I guess I've always carried that responsibility with me, which is why, with Paul Burke, we set up ATC New South Wales branch back in 1989, and I've tried to do all I can to support the Tibetan cause since, to be a voice, be a witness about what the Chinese are doing in Tibet. And I hope my story today, on this anniversary, October the 1st, is an inspiration for you, or at least gives you food for thought. And in whatever way you can, do something to be a witness or to be a voice for Tibetans in Tibet.